Namaste, everybody, including, of course, dear Lisa, who is giving of her time generously and with great love to share with us all of her wisdom concerning concerning the substance of the great Akasha, and how, of course, at this time, as a record library, it is open for us all to be able to read and therefore become wiser, become more embodied with the enlightenment of our souls. So let me just share with you from the bio that Lisa has provided me with, who Lisa Barnett is. Lisa is the founder of the Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom, where she has taught thousands of students worldwide to access personal soul guidance from their Akashic records. She is also the author of 4 books on the Akasha, including her latest book, Akasha, which is beautiful. It arrived the other day. Lisa very kindly sent me a copy, and it's absolutely wonderful. And she has more than 30 years' experience in working with the Akashic record channeling processes linked with quantum healing. Lisa helps to provide greater clarity about old karmic patterns, updating soul contracts, and clearing polluted soul programs. Thereby, the individual experiences greater happiness, abundance, and love in alignment with their soul plan, which is observed by the Akashic Library of Thought. So welcome. This is the second time that you've been on Deep Dialogues, and it's always great to have you here because of your freshness and your generosity and your fun. So thank you for being here.
So beautiful to be here again with you, Stewart. I appreciate you, and I'm honored to share this luminous wisdom with you and all of your beautiful listeners. So thank you.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure. And you are coming at the end of a season of female soul stewards. We're getting towards the season, at the end of the season, and there have been 12 extraordinary people that have shared all of their amazing wisdom with us. So to begin with, for those people who are unfamiliar, this is an unusual word, Akasha, for many people perhaps. Could you perhaps provide us with the definition of what is the Akasha? What are the Akashic records?
Yes. So the Akasha is actually the etheric energy that records everyone's soul journey throughout all time-space continuum. So it's easy to imagine that you're an infinite soul with thousands and thousands of books, and those books all go into your personal library. So everyone has their own personal Akashic record or Akashic library, as well as a team of Akashic record beings of light that keep your records for you. And they are here in service to us. They are here to help inform us, to guide us, to share wisdom with us. And so it's a beautiful thing to learn to access this wisdom of your soul's journey through all time.
Beautiful. So the operative word is that it is really a compendium of all the experiences that we've had or that our souls have had, all of the lives that we have spent. Do you also believe that our souls are part of the animal, vegetable, and mineral kingdom? Or do you believe purely that our souls incarnate as humanoid?
I believe that we like to play. And so I actually believe that we do live in many other realms, of course, animal and I can feel even the energy of the tree, of course, all of these kingdoms we experiment in, as well as so many others.
Because as we're saying, the whole of infinite intelligence that is animate, that is sentient, has soul. We love to feel that fatuously we have soul within, and indeed, of course, our bodies are generated and animated by sentience, and therefore soul is within. But actually, we're all in soul, aren't we? We're all actually in this huge soup of infinite potential. Is that something you would subscribe to?
Yes, absolutely. Because when I look at the Akash and even in moving into the energy and the vibration of this Akashic field, it is part of source. It is part of the quantum. It is absolutely part of the all. And so that gives us the gift to be able to experience so much more than who we are in these bodies, because we can remember and access some of the lives when we were possibly in other physical forms, in other dimensions, in other planes. I always love to play with the Mer world, and I feel very connected to the blues, to the water, very much often the Bahamas and Atlantean lives and Mer people lives. And so we have access to these, infinite lifetimes that we've had in so many forms.
Amazing. So the way that you present it to us is such a beautiful celebration of the multi-dimensional frequency of what soul is capable of achieving, which is absolutely beautiful. But I also would imagine, and this is maybe an incorrect assumption, but I would imagine that the majority of people whom you work with are moving through some form of travail, some form of challenge or difficulty, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually, where it's difficult to understand why the choices have been made that have brought the individual to that level of difficulty or challenge. And presumably, although this may be an assumption, that's when leaning into or touching into or keying into the Akashic Record can be very specifically useful for that individual to provide perspective, to provide healing, and also to provide those extraordinarily uplifting energies that can be provided by the record keepers. Is that true for you?
Absolutely. So it's, again, quite a blessing for people when they're challenged with some sort of trauma, or maybe they were even born into a family that had a lot of challenges and emotional pain. And this person has grown up wondering, am I a bad person? Is this, happening to me because it's an old karmic pattern, or is it happening because I did something wrong? Or why in heaven's name would I choose to be born into this family that has abusive patterns or mental challenges, or all sorts of different kind of challenges that we find in our world? And so what happens is, when I do an Akashic Record reading for a client, I bring them into the field with me. And because this energy of the Akash is pure source, people feel wrapped in the love. They feel held in the divine. They start to know really, energetically, intuitively, that this is not a punishment. This is not something that is happening because they did something wrong, but it actually is something that their big, grand soul chose before coming into a body, so that they could learn, that they could grow around the information, around the trauma, that they could go forward and help other people. And other people may be one person, or it may be a lot of people. They may go forward and become a therapist and work with trauma in people, or they may go forward and do something, even come up with some new invention or technology that helps people. And so we actually choose challenges so that we grow as a soul, but also that we can reap the gifts and the wisdom of that experience, so we can share the wisdom with humanity. And when we start to see it in that way, all of a sudden we move from feeling like a victim to realize that we have gifts to share with humanity.
Mm. Beautiful, beautiful. And because at this time we know that there are many shifts of consciousness in our world, and we look, for example, to the Middle East, and we see that there is a level of stagnant consciousness that is trying to force its way into revelation and illumination. The difficulty is that there's a great deal of violence and hatred that keeps it at bay. But when we move into the definitions of our own incarnatory pathways, presumably there is an element where the dear one who comes to you is uplifted, as you've just described, is placed within that transcendental unfolding of source force. But at the same time, presumably has a huge question about the nature of the fact that what they're experiencing is perhaps a pitch of feeling that has been repeating itself all the way through their lives.
Yes.
And so we speak of karma. And so the Akashic record keepers also illustrate what the karma may be, presumably, so that with that level of identity, with that level of understanding or illumination, we can begin to detach, feel stillness, and observe, so that's why this is taking place. Because so much of what, presumably, and maybe this is an incorrect presumption, that many of the people that come are working through something on an unconscious level, which is why they're seeking higher intelligence, higher illumination. Is that so?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, because we live, most of us, hundreds of lifetimes
Mm.
on Earth, we don't do things just once. So when we go into the Akashic Library and we ask these beautiful record keepers, how many times, or show us more about this karmic pattern? Where else has this arisen in other lifetimes? What facets can we understand? What can we release for this person in this moment? And so they'll often show us, it might be 5 lifetimes, it might be 25 lifetimes, where this pattern has repeated again and again, often over thousands of years. And so we start to understand that the path with karmic patterns is that we do all sides. We play, kind of all facets of the game, right? So if you can imagine that we are huge infinite souls and we want to do something maybe a little more interesting than just hanging out in these beautiful high dimensions, we're like, let's try this planet where there's all sorts of things to understand and grow around and learn, and a whole nother way to evolve as a soul. And so we start to see and understand that we have not only been the good, but we have done the work of the dark. We have been, angry, abusive humans. We have been greedy and we have been generous, right? We have done every side of the level of dichotomies that there are in our world, right? So if we've been good, we've been bad. If we've killed, we've been killed. All of these pieces. And they start to see this through the Akash, many, many, many lives. And what we can do in this amazing energy, because it is quantum field, there is no time and space. And so these lives are actually always available to change or to shift, to heal. So as a person, as we start to realize and own our part, and we start to realize the growth, and we do forgiveness work, and we become more compassionate in the world, and we move through with a greater awareness, we are rewriting our Akashic records. And we, as a client and a consultant in the Akash, can really quickly move some of these old energies where there might have been an old stuck contract where we contracted to do this work. There may be some forgiveness work we can do in past lives, right? We can reclaim some of the gifts we had in those lives that may have been kind of stuck in the past because of trauma. So there's a lot of energy that can be moved and even reclaimed, the positive energy and the gifts, when we work together in the Akasha.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what do you feel is the super objective of thousands and thousands of lives?
To remember, really, to remember the truth of who we are as infinite souls, that we are all one, that love really is the answer. So we've moved through all of these lives, and as we're coming to an interesting new energy and certainly new precipice, we have an opportunity in the world at this time to change the old earth into a new earth, to move from the energy of kind of war to move to peace, to eventually move to awakening, which really means the expansion of our consciousness, to be a very conscious human, where we're very conscious of everything we do and say and how we act, and the love, really the compassion and the love we're able to bring to the world. And so soul by soul, I believe that as we move into our hearts, and out of our fear and our like linear mind and judgment around, right or wrong or good or bad, or more or less, do I have enough? Can I survive? All of those fears hold us stuck in this world that we're in. So literally moving into our hearts and love, being able to know that we're here to be love in the world, to be compassion.
Beautiful.
Really is so easy of a way to change the planet, right?
Well, you've just given us a schema, which is what we generally speaking refer to as being the ascension process, and absolutely wonderful. And you speak about it with great detail, and therefore profound insights, I'm sure, come to you as you're moving through helping a dear one who has come to you in terms of reading their Akashic records. And just to give it context, because I know that there are many people who come to deep dialogues who are very experienced initiates. When I say initiates, I mean that they, either through inspiration or desperation, awoke some time ago in terms of earth life, and have been asking pertinent questions about their soul. The great question, why? And have discovered all sorts of wonderful things by unpicking the darkness of the shadow and moving into the light, and of course literally reaching out and yielding or surrendering to someone whom they trust, who appears to have intelligence and wisdom and understanding about the extraordinary nature of what it is to be awake and alive and initiated in spirit at this time. But there may be people listening in who are new to this extraordinary aspect of wisdom that you're sharing with us. And I wonder, just to illustrate the profundity of what you're sharing with us, I wonder if you could possibly, without breaking confidences, give us a sketch of a client that you may have had over the last 6 months or a year, so that we see something also very topical about what it is to be alive on planet Earth at the moment, where obviously, as we're seeing, all of our central organizing principles are really beginning to flounder, meaning our establishments are beginning to flounder. And of course, we have generically within us this belief and also sensation of needing to plug into them for safety and security. And if we unplug, many people are feeling very unsafe and very insecure. And so, you're going to be very busy. So what do we do? I mean, you've already shared with us that we're in the process of developing a new hierarchy of values for the brave new world that we're creating, and that we're all going to be instrumental in the creation of that, because we're coming back to the non-separation of wholeness, of unity consciousness. And so we can begin to feel the empathetic magic that's being shared with fellow initiates. However, if you could give us a case study, that would be wonderful.
Yes, I would love to. As a matter of fact, I had a Akashic session with a lovely, lovely soul just last week, and it's so fun to see how the energy is even changing on the planet, and even the way the readings that I do are transforming, because people are so much more aware and conscious and awake in these ways. So this lovely soul came to me. She's a doctor. She left the work in the hospital during COVID, so a few years ago now, and went to work with her father, who was also a doctor, in health and wellness. But she was really wondering, is there something like a past life or some old energy or old contracts that's kind of holding me back? Because I'm not sure where to go next. I don't know my next step. I feel a little bit lost, even though I'm working as a doctor and I like this, anti-aging wellness, but I'm not feeling all the way there, right? And so sometimes people come with those sorts of big questions. So the piece that was really interesting for me was that the Akashic Record keeper said immediately to me, we don't want to go into the past. It is not as important for this individual. It is time to look forward into creating what she has come to create. And so they told me many things about her soul's plan had been to help bring new energy, new wisdom, new inventions, new ways of guiding people as a doctor as we're going forward in this, creating this new world. And one of the things that the record keepers have said is that the old paradigm of medicine is starting to fall away. People are wanting something different than a pill, and they're wanting new technology. And so I had a few downloads of some ideas for her to look into, some new technology that the record keeper said would be similar to what she's either going to create and or creating a new kind of health center with some of these new technologies moving forward that are healing people really on an energetic, very deep level. So she was very excited, and we had just a lovely, lovely conversation, and she couldn't wait to share the information with her father and her husband to start to create this. And she said, I've never heard of these things, but it feels so completely aligned. And what you were saying is, there was a bit of information that came through, and she said, oh my gosh, somebody just told me about that yesterday, but I didn't think that was of interest to me. So I'll go back and re-look at that now that you've brought it up, right? Because I never heard of it before. So very fun, very exciting. And I'm really looking forward to continuing our conversation with this woman about how she does move forward, creating this new wellness center.
Oh, isn't that exciting? Because bless her, she's been through years and years and years of training as an allopathic doctor. And then, of course, years and years of experiencing what it is to work within the system as an allopathic doctor, within the institutions of the medical establishment. And the very fact that she broke forth, presumably she broke forth rather than broke out, but broke forth during COVID because of the way that COVID was being treated.
Yes.
And wanted to discover a new way of being, which is presumably coming back from what you've said to the holistic nature of that healing is a movement back to wholeness rather than just dealing with fractured or fragmented parts of the human form. Fascinating. And the new technologies that are coming forth, are you speaking of light technology or
Yeah,
ultrasound or?
yes, light and sound. A lot is working with scalar waves, moving into base 12 out of base 10 energies, which is not our complete natural way of being. So it's really about upgrading the human body. So very, very exciting that these things are coming forward with ways to start to upgrade the body as we're moving forward, because I believe our bodies will, and it's important that they do upgrade into a higher base 12 energy. So we're more complete, that we can actually start to access our 12 strand DNA instead. And so I believe there's so much that is coming online that will make it possible to really create this new earth, to do what we've been hoping for or dreaming of, but have not really known how it will happen. But I believe that, as the record keepers say, much of this is coming ancient wisdom, some from Atlantis and Lemuria, some from the stars, some, from us, our souls, as these galactic beings, that we can remember these different inventions and systems and tools we had in other worlds and other times.
Yeah, and I mean, particularly in Atlantis and Mu,
Yes.
because the ancient wisdom energy bands are beginning to open up. It's time for us to, as you were saying earlier, to remember that much of this information was actually being shared through life in those two civilizations, simply because we were living a higher vibrational frequency in terms of our DNA. You just referred to the 12 helix DNA and suggested that there is something somewhat deficient about the fact that we're not living a 12 helix DNA. And just for anybody out there who may be tuning in and is thinking, oh, that's interesting, what's that? Perhaps we could just illustrate that for them. You speak of a 12 helix DNA, except we have been educated and socialized into believing that we only have a double helix DNA. So what exactly are you referring to?
So I'm definitely not a scientist, but what I hear from the Akashic record keepers is that, of course, we have this very truncated, 12 strand DNA with a lot of junk DNA. Now, why would we build a body as infinite, beings? Why would Source create something that was deficient or had a bunch of junk built into it? And what I hear from the record keepers and am noticing and studying is that we will be able, as we are upgrading our energy, our vibrations, our frequencies, as we are really using sound activation and scalar wave activations and things that I don't even know about yet, that are yet to be invented or brought forward, our junk DNA will come back online, and we will actually actualize as a 12 strand DNA human with so much more capacity, right? In our minds, right? Of course, we only use, what do they say, 10% or something. That's all kind of silly if you imagine. Why would Source, right? Why would we, as infinite creator beings, create something that is somewhat broken? So we didn't. We've just, put the pieces in, and now it's time to turn them on. And I think we'll see a lot of that, I believe, happening pretty quickly over the next 5 and 10 years, and hopefully even sooner. But, it's a
Yeah.
process, because we are in human bodies.
And indeed, there are many studies that are being carried out in Russia, particularly by one of the world's leading geneticists and one of the world's leading endocrinologists. The particular man that I'm referring to is Boris Ostronov, who has discovered children with a triple helix DNA already activated within their bodies. And of course, we know many of the children that are being born at this time are very remarkable in their field of sensitivity. We're referring to them either as crystal children or rainbow children, that they have an acute degree of sensitivity. And what impacts their sensitivity as they share with us is they appear to have a wisdom beyond their years. And so we're beginning to see that this potentiality of a triple helix DNA is really allowing us to see the multidimensionality of what our consciousness is all about. So when we speak of junk DNA, perhaps we could actually just spend a few moments looking at shadow, the
Mhm.
shadow complex, created by the ego. And how, just because we're dealing with differentials, because we're living a binary system, that nothing is singular, everything is plural, that there's nothing on earth that's good or bad, that thinking makes it so. So we have love, hate, good, bad, accurate, inaccurate, guilt, innocence, etc., etc., etc. That list goes off into infinity. We're beginning to see that this is an amazing spade or tool that we can use to alchemicalize darkness into light. But perhaps you could just give us a little bit of information about what you see in your practice of what condenses the junk DNA in terms of shadow or ego.
Yes. So when we're really living very kind of intensely in this world of duality, and of course, we are at the moment all living in duality, right? As you say, right or wrong, good or bad. And as we start to in the Akashic field, again, a field of pure infinite possibilities in this quantum field, we can start to see that we are not stuck in two choices, but there are infinite choices. And as we can, to me, when we look at the shadow, we are just realizing that this is a small, tiny aspect of who you are as an infinite soul. And we're able to really shift it or release it very quickly because we realize this is not just who I am. It's not this or that. It is so much more. There are so many choices. There's so many possibilities. And what the record keeper is saying, we're literally moving as we do all of this and start to shift the energy and more light coming to the planet. We are moving into creating, going from binary to, I don't actually even know. I always say tri-wave. I'm not really sure. There must be another word for three instead of the duality. But we're moving into creating like energy of triangles instead of duality. And so as the shadow lifts, we actually see beneath it the infinite possibilities. And even in the quantum, in the healing that I do, I often see the shadow lift and evaporate because it's recycled through everything being energy, right? Recycled through source, and the infinite possibilities kind of wake up and expand and become who we really are as these phenomenal souls with infinite possibilities. Even though we wrote a plan before we embodied, we wanted to learn, we wanted to grow, we wanted to have these challenges. But it's not just that. We're literally even moving past that into being the true creator beings that we are, embracing this energy of creativity and infinite possibilities. So we're unsticking almost from the old pattern of duality and opening not just to even tri-wave energy, but to infinite possibilities. So to me, it is a very exciting time to be alive. And these beautiful little souls who are embodying with three strands of DNA, I imagine they'll like popping up to 12 really quickly. I hear from the record keepers that they really are here to invent, to remember, to make these shifts, to help us make these big transformations on our planet. Because, you know, when we think about it, there's a lot to rebuild. And I believe these children who right now may be 1 or 5 or, you know, some of them maybe 10, but over these next 50 years, but really over these next 5, 10, 25 years, I believe we're going to see phenomenal shifts in our world.
Mm. Well, we're already, aren't we? We're really all,
Yes.
because it's, and particularly, I speak relatively about the time that we're going through during this particular month. The fact that at the beginning of July, the star Sirius, our spiritual sun, moved through its orbit to being positioned directly over the Great Pyramid. So activating its relationship with Orion. And we know that it's actually shining its extraordinary light. And, you know, I actually made a recording the other day, one of my monthly transmissions from the Angels of Atlantis, which is called Illumination, where much of this information from the angels is imparted within it. I'll make sure that I send you a link to it, Lisa, so you can see it. You know, if it's something that you're interested in, I think you will be.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
This is leading us through to to August the 7th for the Lionsgate portal, where again, the energy of the Sphinx is opened for revelation and illumination. And so, in other words, what we're really talking about is that higher frequencies of light, through the capability of what our planetary focuses are all about, meaning that light downloads into color, downloads into sound and into matter. So we see that light and sound technologies are being used, or light and sound modalities are being used tremendously in the currency of our newfound spiritual intelligence to heal, but also to support and to make buoyant and to uplift. And so we're seeing all of these extraordinary frequencies that enable us to literally feel a separation within our senses, that we can feel an expansity and a capacity opening that hitherto had been quite contracted and intensified. And as a result of that, we'd experience frustration and impatience and fear and agitation, and leading us into depression, or leading us indeed into those very robust energies that we call anger and hatred. That these are beginning to, not with all human beings, but with many human beings, we're beginning to see a way of learning a new currency, learning a new linguistic, where we can make immediate choices of how to move forward and not just simply perpetrate what we were taught by our parents if they were challenging parents, to be angry, to resolve something, that anger is based on a reaction rather than on a response. So, really what I'm nudging us towards, that within all of your work, would you believe in the essential tenet that feeling is the language of the soul, and that what we need to do is to tune into the higher vibrational feeling states to allow us to uplift and be transcendent and be buoyant? That we need to seek out joy, we need to seek out liberation, we need to seek out freedom. Is this something that you would subscribe to?
Absolutely. So to me, when I teach my students to access the Akashic Records, really that feeling sense is so important because it leads us, right? It is part of our guidance system. And what the record keepers often say is, plan your day so that your day is filled with joy and love and high energy, high frequency. So their suggestion to us is, say you start your day by meditating, and if possible, maybe you take a walk in nature, and we spend time with people we love, being the love, right? Being kind, compassionate, caring, having fun, having joy, laughing, all of these aspects, all of those frequencies, all of that energy creates who we are as a vibrational human. And so as we create more of those frequencies in our body, in our system, in our life, every single day, that's what we're sending out to the world, right? That's what, not just into humanity, but actually into the universe, into the quantum, into the aspects of infinite possibilities. So we start to call all of the good, all of the love, all of the light and joy and opportunities. So new doors open. So actually, creating a new earth is less complex, I'm going to say, but when we live in our heart center instead of in our head, when we're in our love instead of our judgment, when we really base our life on being a high vibrational soul, sharing the light and the goodness of who we are, then we are creating that tenfold out into the world, and it ripples out through the people we love and we touch. They raise their vibration, and as their vibrations raise, right, they're affecting people around them. So we're really in this phenomenal expansive ocean of ripples, and we're rippling high vibe love and compassion, and that will help us transform humanity, the world, our energy and our views, of course, with the alignment and beautiful energy of Sirius, and you know, we have this beautiful Lion's Gate coming up, and all of these pieces are helping us. They are really here to support humanity in awakening at this time. So again, I'm just very excited.
So as everybody can feel that we're really indicating that there is an intelligence within the universe, within the multiverse, that is made up of sentience, whether they be other beings that aren't with skin, or they are with skin and they just simply look different from humanoid. The point is that they are vibrating from a much higher frequency, and they see the destiny of planet Earth awakening at this time, and they wish to assist. And this goes back to the whole substance of our DNA, doesn't it? Because they can see how we have labored through the entanglement of dense DNA, that we have 44 codons that are dormant, waiting to awaken. So and 44 is an interesting numerological sequence because it's the number that represents spiritual purity and is often associated with the angels, or indeed with Lemuria, known as Mu. Lemuria is quite a new way of referring to Mu, and Atlantis, which are two great civilizations that existed almost simultaneously, one in the northern hemisphere, one in the southern hemisphere. And in fact, there is a very fascinating man that I'm going to be talking with to finish the season, who is a Mu wisdom keeper, and he is part of a lineage that goes all the way back as an indigenous person, going all the way back thousands and thousands of years into prehistory. And he's re-evocating, so to speak, the use of fern medicine, of using ferns for healing. And he has this extraordinary portmanteau of information about the substance of what it is to be a Mu wisdom keeper, what it is to be a kahuna. However, back to the Akashic Records. So as you look forward to the developing consciousness of your own practice and all the wonderful people who are coming in to utilize your services, your facilitation, you've created this wonderful book, Akasha.
Yes.
And, of course, there we are. There's a copy. I have a copy. It's it's just over there. I can't reach it. It's a little bit further away. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. So everybody's going to be going out and buying it. Could you perhaps give us a little bit of a preview of what the book is containing?
Absolutely. So Akasha, I really love this book because it's in 3 very distinct parts. And so the first part, we really share so much information about what the Akashic field is, what your Akashic records are, who your record keepers are, just a lot of details about your soul plan, why you write one, why it matters, right? How the Akashic records can actually help and support you to really transform your life in phenomenal ways. And then in the second section, there are 20 beautiful souls who have written their experience of accessing the Akashic records, the gifts that have happened, the things that have transformed their lives. And many of them are students who have studied with me over the years. Some people access the Akashic records in different ways. Some people energetically have found their path into the Akash. And so they've had these experiences, they've followed the guidance of their record keepers, and things have transformed. Miracles have happened. It is very profound. So I love the fact that we have these, all these authors, these 20 other authors who have added their voice to the Akasha. And then in the third part, I actually teach you my 5-step wisdom prayer system that the Akashic Record keepers gave me many, many, many years ago when they asked me to start a school and share this work with humanity. They said to me, it is time for everyone to have access into their own personal library. Their record keepers, this team of beautiful beings of light, are waiting to talk to them, to guide them, to help them understand why they may have picked this family, created that contract, had this challenge. And so you can learn through my book, Akasha, actually how to read your own Akashic records. Because I really felt, as the record keepers say to me, it is this time in history to wake up. This was such ancient information that was actually pulled away from Earth during the Dark Ages. So 1,000 years ago, the keepers of the record really raised the vibration and the frequency so humans could no longer access it, because we used it for our own good, right? We used it more selfishly. And they said, well, it's not the right time now, not during the Dark Ages. But back in the 90s and 2000, they said, this is the time, right? The dawning of the age of Aquarius, all of these new energies and new alignments, we are moving into a golden age, and it is just started. And so they really have said to me, teach, many, many, many classes every year. Everyone would benefit from having this information and this guidance. So I teach online workshops many, many times every year, as well as I am putting it in my books so that you can access it through reading, if that's the way, that works the best for you. So
I'd
it's
love
the time.
you, if you could, to, because we see the clarity of what you're describing are the contents of the book, and I'd love you to synthesize the last section, because this is very, all the information is exquisite, but the way you were talking about your 5-step schema for I would love you just to give us a synthesization of what that's all about.
Absolutely. So the record keepers said to me that we want to make it simple for people to actually access their Akashic records. So instead of hit or miss, which most people have accessed the Akashic records over the last 100 years because their vibration was high enough to move in. But they say, let's give them a simple tool. And so the 5-step wisdom prayer system is what came of that information. So there are very simple access keys in the form of a sacred prayer. So I have now been given 8 sacred prayers or keys to help people to access the Akashic records. And each one is really aligned with a star seed lineage. So there is an access prayer that's aligned to Sirius, one to the Pleiades, one to Orion, right? One to Arcturus, one for the galactic traveler, as people like you and me are, Stewart. And I'm sure most of your listeners are big galactic travelers. So many, there's actually even one for those of us who are very angelic. There is an angelic access key. And so it's a simple system. You literally are able to read this energy prayer, this access prayer, a few times, and the record keepers help to create a beautiful column of Akashic light around you and move your vibration up so that you can start to communicate with them. And of course, all of us receive information differently. So some hear, some feel, some have the claircognizance, that deep knowingness that often kind of comes through your heart. I just know the story. I know the truth. Of course, many of us are clairaudient. So in my workshops, and we talk about this in the book, all these all these ways to access the wisdom and to communicate with our record keepers. We start to open those avenues and deepen these processes. So I teach you very simple exercises to ask questions, receive downloads, start to write out what you're see, hear, feel, know, right? Start to translate that information into words so that you can actually read a message that's coming from your record keepers. So it's a beautiful, like, step-by-step process. They made it simple and linear, and I'm really so excited to share that because, again, it feels so important right now.
Mm, mm. And it's just interesting, just on a level of parallel, to give amplification to all that you're saying, and also to see the relativity that's being shared with me by a number of other healers around the world. That I had an email from someone this morning who's been working as a psychologist through soul regression for a number of years. And she's just also written a book, which is not strictly speaking about the Akasha, but all that you describe is very much in parallel with the way that this person has actually has presented in her own book. So she wants me to read it, endorse it, and then have her onto deep dialogues. She's been on before. I can't mention her name right now, but she's a very world celebrated soul regressionist, um, and is beginning to see, which excites me very specifically, more and more people revealing a level of consciousness of being very closely in association with angels. So this thrills me. So Akasha, the book hello, is a wonderful step forward for you. We're moving towards the completion of our time together, but I wonder if you could just give us a shape of the arc, your creative arc. The Akashic record keepers are obviously keeping you busy and giving you all sorts of interesting projects to keep moving forward to illuminate the conviction of what this bounty and this beauty is all about. What's the next project?
The next project, I'm honestly, I'm working on my PhD because I really am wanting to bring this transformational, really transpersonal education more prominently out to the world. And so I will write a book about, again, a little bit more of the scientific bridge between Akash and science. And really, it's an important time to help make that bridge so that people can see this sort of work as something that is valuable and kind of working on the science aspect of having it more validated in different ways. So really bridging science, the quantum field, and the Akashic Records, and sharing that with humanity. So that's the next
Wow.
project.
How exciting. And so your PhD is within which particular stream of learning?
I'm I'm seriously very new in transpersonal education and consciousness. So sometimes you do a double. I haven't totally decided, but that's what I'm feeling: transpersonal education and consciousness. So bringing that out in that sort of way. Because I have a school, right? I've been a teacher of this transformational, transpersonal education for over 25 years now. And so really just kind of deepening that wisdom and sharing that with the world.
Well, it's wonderful to know that whatever academic body you're associated with, and of course, we can keep it completely confidential, but it's wonderful. Presume it's a university body. It's wonderful that they are open to the possibility of registering you for the attainment of becoming a doctor of philosophy. Amazing. And of course, what we need also is we need a reference to your website. And so, Ryan, I hope you could possibly put Lisa's website up on the screen so that everybody can copy it down. It certainly will be in the notes that are linked to this wonderful deep dialogue. Ryan's just finding it. And so it's at this point, I would love to reach out to the audience and say, do you have any questions? So we don't have an audience that is literally v- vocal or indeed visual. So what is the biggest question that you find is coming up all the time for you at the moment?
You know, I would say that most people are, and feeling very blessed, that my clientele has been on a spiritual path, most of, for a while. And many people really are excited and looking forward. And so often, the biggest question is, can I reclaim some of the past lives and the gifts and the talents that I've had honed in other lifetimes? Is it possible to energetically do that? And it absolutely is. And so it's very exciting, again, working in this quantum field of no time, to be able to reclaim some of these memories, these gifts, energetically bring it into this body, this moment, so they can start to reclaim. And the other aspect of that is the validation. So when we are choosing to go from maybe being an allopathic doctor to being a more expansive doctor, healer, wisdom keeper, bringer of new visions, that it is possible to get that validation in the Akashic Records. And that was what I really noticed with my client last week, is as a very obviously educated person, doctor, she needed the validation that there are other possibilities, that there is, that she's not just there already and now it's only this from now on. And so this bigger expanse of things she'd never thought of, right? Concepts that she'd never heard of. And
Well,
so,
it's
you
interesting,
know,
isn't it? Because it
very,
shows
yeah.
Our Western education models have led us into an acquisition of all sorts of different possibilities from the different areas of academia. But actually, what most of them do is to narrow the field of the consciousness that we have in the compass of our brains, because they're not in full embrace of holism. And how wonderful that she has the courage to step forward and recognize that this no longer serves me and I'm no longer serving it. So, where do I need to go? What do I need to be? And what do I need to do to allow this new refurbishment of self, so that her soul, from an holistic point of view, can really sparkle forth and find ways of being able to heal through love rather than through take the red pill or the black pill?
Yes.
So
Yes,
this is
and to know
one.
that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your generosity. And ladies and gentlemen, when you hear these wisdoms being exchanged, hopefully you consider them between us. Certainly, I've observed Lisa give us a lot of really ravishing wisdom. Please do write within the comment box. Ask questions, become enlivened by what we've talked about. And obviously, just be aware, be sensitive to the fact that Lisa and I are really, really, really busy people. So, if you provide us with an essay, it's not going to be something that's practicable to deal with. But if you leave one short question, that Lisa and I are constantly in contact, I can easily reach out and ask her, or indeed, I may be able to answer it myself. Could you please tell us your website so that people can acquaint themselves? Ryan, if you're there, if you could put Lisa's website up on the screen, it may be an impracticability. What is it, Lisa?
It is Akashic Knowing. It's pretty simple. So akashicknowing.com, and AKASHIC Knowing, KNOWING. Beautiful. I see it right there. So you can find me there. You will see the live online workshops that I'm teaching on my website. You'll find my books all there with some free gifts, right? As well as Akasha consultations with me, if that speaks to you.
Brilliant, 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 brilliant. And just if I may, to couple with that, ladies and gentlemen, if you're unfamiliar with the Angels of Atlantis, please do look into www.theangelsofatlantis.com. And also, there are all sorts of free transmissions given to me by the angels that you'll find on my YouTube channel, Stewart Pearce, The Voice, or Stewart Pearce, because as you can hear, I have this thing called a voice, because for many, many years, I was an actor initially, and I've been a voice coach for the last 45 years. So, and a sound healer. So there we will have to complete. Thank you so much, Lisa. Sending you huge amounts of love. And to all our listeners and watchers, love to you. And hopefully this has uplifted you and provided you with all sorts of interesting thoughts and feelings that will take you into a transcendental corridor of light. So namaste, namaste, namaste. Thank you, Ryan. Please stay where you are. Lisa, for a moment.